Welcome back to Bloomberg special coverage, Shake Up in Silicon Valley. I want to head back to San Francisco, where Cory Johnson takes a look at Eric Schmidt's 10-year run as Google's chief executive officer and how the company manages to stay ahead of changing online trends. Or does it, Cory?
Yeah, but of all the skills that Eric Schmidt exhibited in his 10 years running Google, perhaps the most interesting was the ability to keep the company ready when a major technology shift began. Whether it was the internet video, smartphones, cloud computing, even mobile payment, perhaps no one in the world of technology has watched Google more closely than John Battelle. Now, John Battelle is the CEO of Federated Media, also the author of Search: How Google and Its Rivals Rewrote the Rules of Business and Transformed Our Culture. Battelle, also the publisher of Search Blog, and has hosted the influential Web 2.0 conference, where he's been interviewing the Google Troika for years and years. Now, John, Google over the years has had this ability to skate where technology is going to be. Yeah. Is that something that Eric was really sort of, as a technologist and as a manager, is that something he was so good at doing? Is that his reputation within the company?
Unquestionably that Eric played a large role in that, but I think you actually have to give Larry and Sergey a lot of the credit for that. Eric allowed them to take the time to pay attention to these trends and bring these deals in. I mean, if you look at Android as an example, where I think
it was an acquisition.
It was an acquisition, absolutely. And a lot of their sort of big product plays have been acquisitions, even in search, when they decided to go into contextual advertising and AdSense. They made an acquisition down in Los Angeles. So they've really paid attention to those little companies that might really change the game for Google. And Larry, in particular, has been involved in every one of those decisions along the way.
Surely with those three guys, though, trying to figure out what technology is going to be next, there've got to be some disagreements. I know you've been talking to people at Google today.
Yeah, I have, yes.
What do they say about the culture of disagreements? Some disagreement is good. Too much disagreement means somebody leaves. Here we have a big change. It makes you wonder.
Well, all of them have embraced this idea that you want to have healthy discussion over the data before you make a decision, and that healthy discussion over the data could also be called significant disagreements that lead to yelling matches. And there certainly have been those, not just over products or strategy, but over major decisions like going into China, for example. And I think
But actual yelling matches like these are known to have gone on?
I think strong disagreements might be a fair statement. But the fact is that that's going to happen at any company. But a company that has one CEO who is the final word and everyone knows it is very different than a company that has three people all in positions of power who generally have to agree to get something done. And the one thing that we've heard over and over again is that Google has been a little slow in making some decisions over the past few years. And I think that's been frustrating for everybody involved.
Okay. Betty, you got a question?
I do. John, being that you know the culture of Google and picking up on Cory's point about sort of the triumvirate, leaders there at Google, is Larry Page ready to take the heat that Google is going to get because it is a $200 billion company and it is lagging behind rivals like Facebook and Apple?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, particularly as it relates to Larry Page. If you look at the people who've been the public face of Google and who are good at the things you have to do as CEO or you are expected to do as CEO, Larry's never been the one who's been particularly good at backslapping customers, making conference appearances, taking questions from reporters on air. He has not been someone who enjoys doing that, much as Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook was not someone who enjoyed doing that up until very recently. So we'll see if he takes to this part of it, or if, as Google often does things differently and perhaps pushes some of their other senior executives who they've recently promoted into the limelight.
The culture of the geek is so important at Google, and although Eric is obviously a computer scientist and understands the business, he's a business guy. He was the adult supervision, right? The geeks are now in charge, and yet their business isn't really a geek business. It's, I was just talking about it. It's marketing, it's advertising. Does technological change put them in a better position to run this company into the future, or might there be conflicts because they're not really embracing what they do?
There is a core sea change occurring in what is their most important business, which is advertising and marketing. That change has been coming for a while. Google's been preparing for it. If you look at the acquisition of DoubleClick, which is one of the largest acquisitions, this was preparing for the shift of massive branded television dollars, sorry, Bloomberg, from television onto online. And this is occurring, Eric said recently, as late last year, that the most important new business for Google is their display business as opposed to their search business. That means that you have to be ready to have those kinds of conversations with brand advertisers, a very different beast.
We'll see how they adopt. John Battelle, CEO of Federated Media, searchblog.com. Thank you very much for joining us. Betty?
Thank you for having me.